Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Trail Talk Highpointing podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, and the high pointer that we're speaking with today is Brian Carlton from Virginia. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lauren. It's nice to be here.
So to start off with, can you tell the listeners a little bit about how you got started in the outdoors?
Sure. I'm from a family of 7 children. I grew up in upstate New York, and my parents, being as frugal as they could, they took us camping normally. We had an old army tent that my father and some of the brothers set up, and it could fit the whole family. And we usually went to Lake George in New York. And so I was used to camping every summer for 2 or 3 weeks. And that just, developed my love for the outdoors and for swimming in lakes and rivers and hiking up mountains and things like that.
Wow. So where in upstate New York did you grow up? I'm just curious because I did my undergrad in Rochester.
Oh, okay. Well, I grew up in Waverly, New York, which is in between Elmira and Binghamton. It's right on the New York-Pennsylvania border.
Okay.
And,
wow.
Yeah, so that's where I grew up, and it's lots of rolling hills in the southern. They call it the southern tier of New York, and
yeah, it is beautiful out there.
It is.
Yeah, I always look at the listener stats from each episode, and there are a lot of listeners in New York State. And some of these towns I've never heard of, so I'll look on the map and I'm like, wow, they're all over. So what got you highpointing?
Well, I kind of fell into it, you might say. A long time ago, I was in the Great Smoky Mountains and hiked up Clingman's Dome, which is the high point in Tennessee, and I liked that. But it took me a long time to become actually a High Pointers Club member. But I lived in Virginia at the time, and I said, well, I wonder where the high point in Virginia is. And then I saw, oh, it's Mount Rogers down in Southwest Virginia, which probably is about 2.5 hours from where I live. So I did Mount Rogers, and I often most of my high points are done solo. I'm not hiking with my wife or my family. It's just basically me, except for some of the higher mountains out west, which I can talk about later. But
for sure,
yeah, that's kind of how I started out, and then I hiked over in West Virginia, the high point over there, and just kind of kept on kept my interest up, and I kept on doing it.
Yeah, I find a lot of guests, and myself included, were kind of accidental high pointers. We go for a hike, and then we stumble upon a sign that tells us that we're standing at the highest point of a state. And I think anyone with just an average sense of curiosity goes, well, what about the next state? And what other states can I do? So, one of the things that fascinates me most about high pointers is that we are all, for the most part, pretty normal people. We have normal lives. We have families. We have jobs.
Yes.
But we still balance this very niche endeavor into our lives. So how do you do that? Do you just on weekends go out and high point, or how do you fit this into your life?
Well, in the past, I'm trying to think, sometimes I would just, it would be a weekend thing. Or if my wife and I were traveling somewhere and there might be a high point within a couple hours away, she may go shopping or doing something like that. So I might drop her off, and then I would head to the high point, park the car, and head up the mountain and back down again. So
yeah, I'm laughing because, well, I'm not laughing, but so many people listening to this are going to understand that, because every time I have to travel somewhere, if it's a state where I've already reached the high point, I'll say like, okay, what else can I do? But if it's a state where I haven't reached the high point, I'm like, how can I fit this into whatever itinerary I'm tied down to?
Exactly.
I think we all understand that.
Yeah, that's what people do. Yeah.
Yeah.
except for I retired a number of years back, and I I actually planned some trips, um, especially in the last 4 years or so, because of the COVID virus. I
Yeah.
planned trips, and in this case, motorcycle trips, um, which I was on my own, solo. I didn't interact with any people, basically. And my wife told me, if you go off on your motorcycle alone, don't be interacting with people and get the virus and bring it back home. So I've actually planned some trips where I was just doing high pointing.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of us did a lot of high pointing during the pandemic. I mean,
Hmm.
for better or for worse, we had the time off. You know, it kind of worked out. And some of these high points can do it in a very primitive manner where it doesn't put you in contact with other people and you can just stay in a tent and then go up and then come back down and maybe not see anybody. So
Yes.
so what do people say when you tell them that you high point?
Well, it depends. If they're kind of outdoors types of people, they become very interested in
Yeah.
what I'm talking about. Uh, but some people who are not very involved in the outdoors, they think it's maybe a bit peculiar, and they wonder how I do it. They say, well, when do you do it, or how do you do it, or so I explained to them all about the High Pointers Club. I explained to them when that I often go solo, which I'm not necessarily promoting that, because I think it is fun to hike with another person or with other people. And often I would see other people, of course, when I was hiking. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but on the trips that I've taken, a lot of times I take everything I need, my tent, my sleeping bag, whatever else, and there is a particular website that I sometimes use. And you may have heard of it, Lauren. It's called freecampsites.net. Have you ever heard of that
No.
website?
No.
Okay, well, you'll have to check it out. You basically put in a town or a city and a state, and up on the screen will pop up free places to camp. And I've used that extensively on my trips out west and my motorcycle trips up north and down south.
What kind of places are they? Are they on someone else's property?
Well, no, they're usually they might be national forests. They might be
Okay.
county parks that allow overnight stays.
Okay.
Um, yeah, there's all kinds of different, or Walmart might show up, or Cracker Barrel. So people
Oh, like
actually
a parking lot?
yeah, they stay in the parking lot. Now I don't generally do that because I don't like to do that. But
Yeah,
Walmart parking lot, sometimes people do spend time there either in a trailer or an RV.
that's right. Or I've heard Planet Fitness too, because if you have a membership there, you can go in and shower and all that.
Oh, that's true. Well, that's
Um,
true.
that's a good resource. I usually, when I'm looking for a camping spot, I'll look for the public lands around the area I'm going to and then go to their reservation site, but I'll do that separately for each, plot of land. Um,
Hmm.
and when I'm camping solo, I try to stay away from those campsites that are on someone else's property because it's just, I don't know who they are. And I'm not going to sleep
Right.
on someone's lawn, some stranger's lawn. So that's why I only stick to public lands. For example, I'm going to go to Mount Rogers coming up. So I found a state park in North Carolina that's very close to Grayson Highlands where I
Uh-huh.
reserved a spot. And then I always look to see it's great to get out alone and do all that. but I also don't mind having neighbors around me when I camp. And so I do look on the availability. I'm like, who else is going to be there? Because, sometimes it's a little weird when you're completely alone.
Yeah.
Although, again, time and a place. I enjoy getting out alone too.
Yeah.
But sometimes I don't hate hearing people. It's not the worst. But what was that website called again?
It's called, and it's spelled out, freecampsites.net.
Okay, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. That's good information.
Sure,
Appreciate it.
That would be. I think it could be useful for people who camp.
Yes, yeah, for sure. So let's get into specific high points. Now, you started off on the East Coast. What were some of your favorite high points out east?
Maryland and West Virginia were both quite interesting.
Okay, I've never heard people say those. When I ask about favorite.
Maryland's kind of a strange shape of a state. It's got a little like triangle way out at the end that shoots down into West Virginia. I remember that being a nice, a fairly easy hike. West Virginia, that was a good one too. But now that I think just recently in the last 5 years, even though I'm from upstate New York, I never did hike the high point in New York, which is Mount Marcy, which is in the Adirondacks, and I just did that 4 years ago. Yes. And that was on one of my motorcycle trips that I took up north, and those mountains are, I'd say, a little bit higher. Well, of course, North Carolina has a high one.
Yeah,
North, which is, I think is it 6,000 feet? Might be 6,000 feet.
I think it's 6,000 and some change. Highest point east of the Mississippi. And it's one of the 2 prominent peaks out east. All the other prominent peaks are out west. The 2 out east are Washington and Mount Mitchell. Let me fact check that real quick because it might be Katahdin. Is that?
Yeah, Mount Mitchell, right? And Mount Washington, New Hampshire. That was. I did that about 8 years ago, and that was a wonderful hike, actually, very good.
Yeah.
But when I was at the top, it was totally fogged in. But then when I started coming off the top, the clouds cleared, and I could actually see the top of the mountain, which was nice to see.
Yeah.
Even though there's antennas and different things up on the top of Mount Washington, it still was a good hike. And in fact, Katahdin is one of the ones I have left to do still. So at some point, I'll be going up to hit Mount Katahdin in Maine.
Now, when you're on these motorcycle trips to other high points, are there any other motorcyclists that are high pointing as well?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Yeah. The trip my trip up north, I did it back in June of 2020. So almost 4 years ago. And of course, the COVID virus had begun in March of that year. So this is one of the trips my wife allowed me to go on. And I basically hit four different mountains, Mount Marcy in New York, in Vermont, Mount Mansfield, and in Mount Massachusetts, Mount Greylock, and then Connecticut, which is Mount Frizzell. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Frizzell.
Oh, that's how we all say it.
Something like that. But I did it on my trusty 2006 Suzuki Boulevard. It's a good sized motorcycle, and I put everything I need on the back of the motorcycle and take off. But I did have a kind of a funny, crazy thing happen the first night that I was up in Northeast Pennsylvania at some campground, but there was nobody else there. there was nobody within a mile of me probably, and I was camping that night, and about 2:00 in the morning, I hear I hear some scratching and rustling out by my motorcycle. And, that kind of freaked me out. So I grab my flashlight. I jump out of the tent, and there's a raccoon scratching at my coat. Well, and this was a good lesson for me to learn because I did tie up my food into a tree. I always
Okay.
do that, of course, but I had hand sanitizer in the pocket of my coat,
They wanted that?
and the raccoon had that in his mouth, and I yelled at it, and it ran away. 20 feet. It ran away. Then I went back to sleep. 10 minutes later, this raccoon's back, scratching at my at my the pack on my bike. And then I realized I had left some chewing gum. So and then I scared it off again, and then it came back one more time for I'm not sure what it was. Maybe something in a pot or pan that I didn't wash out properly. So the bottom line is any kind of scent, anything that has a scent, you've got to get rid of it or put it up in the tree or something because the critters will come to get it. So that
Yeah.
happened on
Yeah.
my motorcycle trip up to New York, and the rest of the trip was great. Great hiking, great weather. I found good campsites, and
Yeah.
it's a
Oh,
good
that's
trip. And it
cool.
took me about a week. I went up there and spent a week, and then headed
Wow.
back to Charlottesville, Virginia. Hmm.
I mean, it's a good thing it was just a raccoon and not a bear.
Yeah. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
wondering. I thought, well, I'm in Northeast Pennsylvania. I suppose there could be a black bear or something around here. But fortunately, it was not a bear, just a little raccoon. Cute little thing.
I don't have a motorcycle. I am nowhere near that cool. I do, however, have an electric bike. I got one for my birthday. My husband bought it for my birthday, and it is the coolest thing. I have so much fun on this bike. I understand. Again, I'm not comparing myself to motorcyclists because I'm nowhere near that cool, but I get it. Like I understand the thrill, and I'm only going like max 32 miles per hour. Um, but this thing is so much fun, and I have like a little pack on the back of it, and I'm trying to
Yes.
figure out how I can do longer trips on this thing. The issue is charging it. Um, and mine weighs so much, like it's 80 pounds. So if the battery ever died, I'd be so screwed just trying to lug this thing around.
Well, it's interesting, Lauren, that you mentioned that because in the past year, I have purchased an electric bicycle,
They're fun.
and I love it. Though I do like pedaling. I mean, I am really into two-wheel vehicles. I have 4 bicycles and 2 motorcycles,
Hmm.
and that's what I usually ride bicycles into town. But if I have to get there quickly, I take my electric bike, and it has, I don't know about yours, but it has 4-inch tires on it,
Yes.
and
Yep.
it's a very comfortable bike, and
Hmm.
it has 5 different power speeds, and it's really wonderful.
Yeah.
And the
So does
thing
mine. What
costs
what brand is yours?
it is a Troxus, Troxus,
Okay.
and I got it at a ridiculous steal for basically $1,000.
Wow.
I bought it on
Wow.
Earth Day last year, April. In fact, it's coming up, April 23rd. I bought it a year ago, and there was a special sale on Earth Day, and it was $9.99, and I couldn't pass it up at that
No.
price.
No. That's really good.
It's a wonderful bike. Yeah.
I first heard about electric bikes maybe 2 years ago or something, and I was skeptical. I was like, that's, you shouldn't do that. The purpose of a bike is for your two legs to use their power to get you
Uh-huh.
from A to B. And I, got all like on the soapbox about it, like until I got on an electric bike and I'm like, okay, this is fun. Like, There's a
It's
time and a place for, those manual bikes, which I love. But you got to let loose on an electric bike once in a while and just have fun. And I just cruise through the neighborhood every day on this. I set aside like an hour a day for this electric bike. The thing is, though, my husband bought it for me, and he's really into cars, ones that go fast. And so he was looking at like the fastest bike possible. And so that's what he got me. And it is technically not allowed on the mountain bike trails near my house. Now, that's not to say, who's keeping track, but this can get up to like 34 miles per hour. And sometimes I'm just like, I should really slow down. This thing can go fast for a bike,
That is fast. My bike only goes up to 25 miles per hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very careful. I wear a helmet and a neon green top suit. You really have to be careful.
Yes, because I'm going at the same speed of cars in my neighborhood. So I, make sure that they're aware that I'm there, and I have the rear view mirrors and everything.
Yeah.
Because you're a car at that point, or you're like a, I don't know, scooter or something on the side of the road.
Well, I call it my electric motorcycle.
Yeah.
Because that's what it feels like.
It does. So, yeah, we got sidetracked. But when you said like, oh, I travel with everything on my back, I'm like, that's what I want to do, with my electric bike. Again, the challenge is just going to be figuring out how to charge it and how to secure it while I'm not riding it, because I can see why people would want to steal it or parts of it. Anyway, so back to highpointing. What would you say your favorite peak on the East Coast was? Was it Mount Washington?
I would say Mount Washington. Yes, up in New Hampshire. It was a gorgeous day. In fact, it was the day that I did that. It was November. It was election day, November 4th.
Okay.
And I think that's when Obama was elected. But it was that day.
Okay.
Back. I don't know. Is that 12 years ago now? I don't know. Something like that.
Yeah, there must not have been a lot of people on the peak then if they were all out voting.
Yeah, no, there was. I think I saw 2 other people on the hike up and down. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, that's so cool. So when did you decide to move out west and take your highpointing further out?
Well, I had one more motorcycle trip down south, and I did that a few months after I went north, and I did 4 other states down south. I did Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. But I did it in September of 2020, and I just want to give a little shout out. That's not the right month to do a southern trip because of hurricanes and rain. So I was just finishing up Louisiana, and I'm heading back towards Virginia, and I just got soaking wet on my motorcycle. It was I was so bad. I was feeling so bad and so wet and cold. I decided to stay in a hotel instead. In fact, I called my wife and I said, "Can you book a hotel for me? In so and so place?" And she said, "Sure, I can do that for you." So I pulled into that hotel and up into the room. I was soaking wet. I stripped everything off, turned the heater on high, and draped my wet clothes all over the room. And I was much better off in the morning. But because of, often, as you know, the end of August and September, hurricanes come through the South.
They do.
It's not a good time to go motorcycling down there. Anyway, so out west, after north and south, I thought, well, I've already done a number of western mountains, and these were guided mountains, like Mount Rainier in Washington and Mount Hood in Oregon. I did I did pay and join a group to hike up those mountains, and naturally, because I didn't want to die on those mountains, as in falling into a crevasse, or they're glaciated mountains. So I think it's
Yeah.
important that you go with someone who knows what they're doing, and someone.
Yeah. I did the same thing, and I have no shame in asking for help when I have never been to an area before. I've had guests on the show that you have so much experience in so many different types of environments and so many different mountain ranges that they could go on Rainier alone with a small group of their own and leave themselves up there. But if you're not familiar and if you've never been in that sort of terrain, it is always best to go with someone who does know what they're doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I did take again during, well, let's see, last year before, I did take a couple van trips, solo van trips. I would pack my mountain bike in the back of the van. I have an old Toyota van that I use, that I received from my mother when she passed, and all my camping gear, and I head out west. So I and one of the in fact, one of the mountains I met my son lived in California at the time, and he met me in Utah, and we did Kings Peak together.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, we had a great time. We really had, and we
Yeah.
saw a bunch of moose, heading up when we were hiking up the mountain. Um,
Wow.
and we have a great picture of the two of us up on top of Kings Peak, which is,
Awesome.
it's 12,797 feet, something like that. And
Yeah.
he's not a high pointer, so uh, I think he had a good time, and I was very proud of him for
Hmm.
for sticking in there and hiking all the way up and back down again. So we had fun camping.
Wow.
But then he went back, and then I did Bora Peak. That was a good climb. I really enjoyed it. Quite a bit of scrambling on that mountain. Uh,
Yeah.
and
How did the Chicken Out Ridge go for you?
it went. You know what I did? I think I I think I skirted. I think I skirted Chicken Out Ridge somehow. I mean, I came down over Chicken Out Ridge on the way down, but on the way up, somehow I went around to the left, and it it, it worked. It was okay. I maybe I made my own path up the mountain, uh, but Chicken Out Ridge. I remember there was a rope there, and I pulled myself up, and I mean it was a little bit scary,
Yeah.
looking down, 1,000 feet or whatever. But I, I didn't have any problem coming back down, going over Chicken Out Ridge, but I didn't really hit it on the way up. I went around it,
Nice.
and then I on the way back east, I did North Dakota and South Dakota, and in fact I did Illinois, because it just so happened I was visiting a friend in Iowa, I think it was Des Moines, Iowa, and I just for the heck of it I said, you know, I don't know when I'll ever get to go to Illinois. I looked at the State High Pointers website, and it said Illinois open this weekend. I said,
Wow.
perfect. I'm I'm gonna I'm gonna spend or go 3 hours out of my way and drive up there, and sure enough, Charles Mound. It's called
Yeah.
Charles Mound, and I was able to do it, and
No, you
it
got that. That
it
was
worked out.
perfect timing,
It was perfect
especially
timing.
now that the latest news there is that it's up for sale, and we just have to
Uh-huh.
wait and you know let the High Pointers Foundation work with the new owners and hope for the best.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
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 So I have taken um, a few trips out west, and as I mentioned, I have 6 mountains left to climb, and this coming August, I'm heading out on another van trip to Wyoming and Montana, and those are two difficult mountains,
Yeah.
Granite Peak and Gannett Peak. And what I've done is I went on all trails. I have a subscription to all trails, and
Hmm.
I put a little ad up there that I was looking for a hiking partner to go with me, especially on Granite Peak in Montana, and I have a date set up with a guy from Phoenix, and we're going to meet there the end of August and hike up that mountain together.
Oh, that's awesome. What kind of experience does he have?
He he has done well. He's done a number of Western mountains.
Hmm.
In fact, he attempted to hike Granite Peak 2 years ago, and the last 200 yards are what are quite difficult. There's quite a bit of scrambling going up, and it was all ice. It was all ice, and they just he couldn't do it. He and his
Yeah.
son. I think he was with his son, and they didn't have ice climbing gear. It's a mountain that generally you can do without ropes and without ice climbing gear. So we're hoping that it's not iced in the end of August this year.
Yeah. Well, one of the very first episodes I did, I think it was episode 3, was with a man named Dean. And Dean is a retired Air Force. And while he was in the Air Force, he took a team of other airmen out to Granite Peak, and together they climbed it.
All right.
And he goes into that climb extensively on that episode. So you might want to check that out. And
Yes.
I can put you in contact with Dean also because he was kind of the leader of the trip, and they did it. I think there were like 7 people that did
Oh,
it.
that sounds very interesting. There was one thing I wanted to mention, Lauren. That in terms of resources, I think about, I don't know, 10 years ago, I went on eBay and I bought the book. As far as I know, it's the Bible for climbing the 50 high points, and it's called High Point Adventures by Charlie and Diane Winger, but the copyright is 2002. So
Hmm.
it's 22 years old now, the book. It's well used, and I think maybe some of the information has changed a little bit, but still,
Sure.
they can lead you to the high points in all 50 states. Yeah, I bought the book for, I mean, it was like $4 or something on eBay. It was a used book, and
Hmm.
I have really used that book a lot.
That's great. Yeah. Well,
Uh-huh.
I was talking to someone the other day, and he mentioned how some of the high points change over time. And, a couple of years ago, maybe a high point was in a different spot until people realized that a couple feet over is actually a little higher. And so
Uh-huh.
they move the survey marker and things like that. So things are always changing. Sometimes there's buildings that go up or structures that go up on top of high points to commemorate something. So little
Uh-huh.
things like that change, but in general, I think a book, no matter how old it is, it's going to be accurate
Right.
on the high
Yes.
points. So what was your favorite peak out west?
Let's see. Well, I did mention in terms of um, climbing and having fun. I would say Bora Peak in Utah
Yeah.
was one of my favorites. But there was no snow, there was no ice and no snow there.
Hmm.
Uh, but years ago, when I did Rainier and Hood, of course, there's always snow and ice and glaciers up there. So they're two different types of experiences, I think. But I would say so far, Bora Peak would be my favorite climb out there. But I've yet to do Granite and Gannett, so they
Yeah.
might become my favorites.
Yeah, well, let me know how that goes, those two. That should be a lot of fun. And sometimes when I ask guests who have done all 50, um, if you could go back and do one again, what would it be? A lot of times they will say Gannett because it was so beautiful.
So
The Wind
beautiful.
River Range. Even though the approach is very long, it is very beautiful.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm certainly looking forward to that. And I'm also looking forward to Hawaii, and my wife is looking forward to going to Hawaii with me.
Yeah.
Even though she's not going to be hiking, but she said, "Sure, I'll go to Hawaii with you."
Yeah, of course.
Of course.
So do you
Uh,
plan on completing all 50?
well, that's a good question. I am 70 years old now, and Alaska, Mount Denali is quite a tough mountain, and I'm not sure. I'm really at this point. I'm not saying never, but I certainly I would have to go with a guide. But I know people older than me have done the Denali hike and
Hmm.
climb. I just have to think about it a little bit more.
So how do you train for all these climbs?
Well, I'm I love being outdoors. I'm outdoors in the woods almost every afternoon. And I'm either running the trails or I'm mountain biking the trails. So I am definitely into running and biking, and I've done some running marathons in the past. I've done about 9 marathons, and I've done some
Wow.
triathlons too, where
Wow.
I swim, bike, and run. So I would say I'm in pretty good shape for the age that I am, and
For sure.
that's how you know I just do things. I stay active throughout the week.
That's the best way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
think
perfect.
so.
Well, you're probably more active than most people half your age, so good for you.
Possibly, yes.
I mean, you never have to get in shape for something if you just stay in shape.
This is true. If I take 2 or 3 weeks off and don't do anything, I really notice it. When I start
Hmm.
in again. Um, so
Hmm.
I do try to stay in shape.
That's right. Yeah. Now, are you a member of the High Pointers Club?
I am. I am, though I've
Hmm.
never been to a convention yet. I I think that's in the future. I probably will. Maybe the next time it comes to the East Coast,
Hmm.
I will do it. I know it was in Georgia last year, I believe,
It
but I
was, and
didn't.
then this year will be South Dakota.
South Dakota, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a great club. There's so many. I think just so many interesting people of different ages and different walks of life. It's just
Yeah.
probably a one. It's I'm sure the people are just wonderful that are in the club.
The people that I know in the club are wonderful, and the people on the podcast, every person I've had has just been a really cool person. Like I haven't
Hmm.
met a high pointer where I'm like, oh, I don't know about you. I'm sure they're out there.
And like I said in the beginning, I was confused between the two organizations, but the foundation, I think the work that they're doing is wonderful in terms of
Yeah.
maintaining high points and putting up signage. I know in Connecticut at Mount Frizzle, I read that they recently put up much better signage and made a better type of high point because that's kind of a different type of high point. You're on the side of a mountain, but you're on the border of Massachusetts and Connecticut, I think. I
Hmm.
think. Anyway, so I think the foundation certainly does a lot of great work that helps all of the High Pointers Club people um, in furthering their desire to reach the high point in each state. So it's a good
I agree.
organization.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I've heard of people who outside of the foundation are just high pointers, and they will just go to their state high point and maybe break the leaves or clean it up or just help maintain it. Not in any kind of elected or official manner. They'll just do it just because it might be a source of pride for them to just keep their home state high point looking clean.
Uh-huh. Exactly. But the magazine that comes out from the High Pointers Club, I I saved those magazines, and what I did, I had a young couple with two young girls across the street from me, and I gave them some of those magazines, and I said, I'm a state high pointer, and it's really a great hobby, and they have started high pointing as a family,
Oh
and
my
I
gosh.
and I said that is just wonderful. That is
It
wonderful.
really is.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean this.
wow.
It really brought me a lot of joy knowing that they're starting out young and they're doing it.
Yeah.
And the
Oh,
magazine
that's
has
so
been
cool.
great, and that's how I learned about your podcast.
I
I have a
agree.
lot of interest in listening to more of your podcasts now, Laura, and I think you do a great job.
Thanks so much. It's just fun. It's a fun thing for me to do, and I think Tom and Tommy, the co-editors of the magazine, they're frequent podcast guests, and they do really, really great work.
Uh-huh.
With keeping it consistent and just putting out great stories and showing pictures that people submit. They're the perfect people to be in the positions that they're in, and I think the club is going in the right direction. They're doing some great things, and I'm happy to be a part of it. Now, do you have any stories about high points that didn't go according to plan, apart from the hurricane season in the South?
I haven't, I'm having a hard time thinking of one that didn't go
Well, you know what? That's good.
in terms of elevation, altitude sickness. I've
Hmm.
I've never had a problem with that, even though Mount Whitney in California, which is 14,000 some. I remember at the top of that mountain, I had a slight headache at the base of my skull, but it was just slight, and I only spent about 20-25 minutes up at the top, and then I started going down again. But um, I so I did, I've never really gotten sick like hiking up to a high point. And I can't think of a bad experience.
Good. That's
Yes.
awesome. I hope it stays that way. I hope that Montana and Wyoming don't change that.
Yes. Yeah, right. But
Oh,
you know
that's
what?
great.
I will mention that my wife, she's was a bit concerned about me, alone hiking. So
Yeah.
I bought something called I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a Zoleo, Zoleo,
Yeah.
and it will
Yeah.
it's
Hmm.
satellite communication. So if I'm out somewhere where there's no cell phone service, I can push a little button on this thing and it will send her an email and say, everything's fine. I'm at this GPS coordinate.
Okay.
Now, if I get in trouble, there is a red emergency button I can press, and it will send an SOS to like search and rescue or EMT
Yeah.
people.
Hmm.
So I do carry that when I know that I'm going to be, like when I go Gannett Peak in Wyoming. I'll probably carry that.
Yeah, that's always good.
Uh,
Um, yeah, I need to get one of those. I feel like I get too comfortable with my phone
well,
and
sometimes there's
just
no service, so
I know. And then I'm like, oh, but there's people, and I'm like, well,
yeah,
there might
yeah.
not be. And yeah, I need to get one. How has the outdoors and high pointing enriched your life?
I would say in many ways it's I'm the a kind of person who likes to set goals. And when I set a goal sometime in the future, I'm one I'm going to work hard to accomplish that goal. So to me, having 50 different high points that I want to reach someday, that really has helped me motivate. It motivates me. It motivates
Mhm.
me. But I love being out in the woods. In fact, there's something, I don't know if you ever heard of this. It's called forest bathing. Have you ever heard
Yes,
of
I
that term?
have. Yeah.
Forest bathing. And that's where, you're out in the woods. You're basically emptying your mind of all the thoughts that are always bombarding our brain. What am I going to do tomorrow? What happened yesterday? All of
Mhm.
this. So to me, forest bathing is like it's like meditation, really,
Mhm.
where you're just out there with the trees and the bushes and the birds and the animals, and um, so hiking up high points. A lot of times I'm alone, and it's kind of a meditative experience. Um,
Yeah.
as I move forward and go higher and higher and higher, and finally get to the point. So
Yes. Mhm.
that's a real reward when I've done that, and then and it keeps me in shape. And another benefit is it really um, keeps my body in shape, which I appreciate. Yes.
Yeah. Mhm. Last question, and it's my favorite question. Do you have any books, documentaries, or podcasts that are outdoor adventure based that you would recommend to listeners?
Oh wow! I read a book last year. My neighbor gave it to me, and I'm trying to think of the name of it.
Mhm.
Um, it might be like Lost on Katahdin or something, and it's about a 12-year-old boy who is hiking up Katahdin in Maine and gets lost, or lost in Maine. I forget the name of it
Let me
now,
look
but
it up real quick.
yeah,
So
um,
we can
it's
hang on one second.
and it's
Lost
about
in Maine.
his. I mean, he's lost for like a week or two. This young boy, and he survives. I mean, it was incredible. Um, I wish I could remember the name of the book,
Hang on one second.
but it was quite
Lost.
quite an interesting book to read about.
Is it called Lost on a Mountain in Maine?
That might be it. That might be it.
Based on the true account of a boy's harrowing journey through the vast wilderness of the Katahdin Mountains, Lost on a Mountain in Maine is a gripping survival story for all ages.
That's it.
Originally published in 1939, author Don Fendler.
That's it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
quite an interesting book. Yeah,
That sounds really cool.
it's about
I'm going
yeah.
to add that to my list.
It's
Lost on
it's
a
a
Mountain
it's a
in Maine.
short book. It's a paperback, and you can read it in 3 hours or whatever. But quite
Mhm.
quite a story of survival for this young boy.
Wow. Yeah, I'll say.
Yeah, I looked the guy up, Don Fieldler, whatever his name is, and
Mhm.
I think he passed away like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. But what an experience to have
Wow.
as a young boy. Wow,
Wow. Yeah.
incredible.
That is really cool. Well, that's a good suggestion. I always love when guests give new books that I've never heard of.
Uh
So
huh. Uh huh.
that's
Oh, you
awesome.
should read it, Lauren.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I always read the suggestions.
Uh huh.
I read them or I have an audiobook that I listen to, throughout the day while I'm taking care of my daughter.
Uh huh.
So yeah, I will definitely check that one out. Well, Brian, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks for
Good.
coming on the show and good luck this summer with Montana, Wyoming. Let me know how that goes. I always love updates from guests.
Okay. Well, Lauren, I appreciate you talking with me and interviewing. This has been a lot of fun for me, kind of reliving some of these experiences I've had. And
Yeah.
you keep up the good work with your podcast. I'm gonna try to listen to all your podcasts now.
Thank you.